Welcome, guys. I'm so glad that you are here. We're at the final episode in this little short 10-week series where we talk about the 10 pillars of financial investing. Just little nuggets along the way. If you're wanting to take that course, just check out the description down below. I've got my wife, Carrie, here today, and she's going to be sharing her thoughts on research-based decisions and how that plays into the financial industry. She's worked in the medical field as a nurse. So I'm so glad that you're here and you're talking about research-based decisions. So why do you feel that is so important? Especially having a medical background, it's, I think, a lot of the types of things that you have to do when you're making decisions in your workplace, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I'm a nurse. That's my background, and also an educator. And it is so important that what we do for patients is actually founded on research, that we know it's actually going to work, we know it's going to be safe for them, we know it's going to be effective, and it's going to produce the result that we want. And that builds trust. It helps people actually get the outcomes that we need to see to save people's lives. So yeah, I definitely understand the value of research-based decision making.
Right. So now that everybody understands that you have that medical background and that you have the understanding of needing research from the medical side, what is your thought process when it comes to the financial industry? How would you translate some of that knowledge over, and is it possible to translate that over?
Okay, that's a really good question. And yes, I think it is possible to translate that knowledge over, and I kind of want to paint a picture, if that's okay. So when I would look at nurses who have, same types of education, went through at the same degree, maybe working in the same department, there are those who want to understand the why behind their decisions. So, for example, if we have a patient who has congestive heart failure and we are going to be putting them on a machine to help them breathe or giving them a certain medication, this person wants to know that the interventions are research-backed or research-based. So we call it like evidence-based medicine. So when you're practicing something, you know that there is evidence that it's worked before, and so it should work again, and given the patient's presentation. So when I see this presentation, I can use this toolkit that I have of medications, interventions, whatever it might be, to get that result that we want. And this person understands the why and understands the research. They're able to apply it more effectively.
Right? So they take that research and basically are able to put it into practice with having that background and understanding all of the research.
Yeah, exactly. And then I've seen other nurses in practice where they don't have that, I would say, critical thinking or that level of inquiry that drives them to read the research and understand it, and they're just basically copying the interventions that they see other people doing.
That's right, yeah.
And if they do that, they might not apply the intervention in the right context. And so they're not going to get the outcome that they're looking for.
That's right.
And so when it comes to the investment world, the way that I kind of see that translate over is you have the one person who's willing to have that level of inquiry, that inquisitiveness, and that desire to make decisions based on research and evidence. They are going to be able to apply it in the right context at the right time to get the outcome that they want. Whereas on the other hand, if you have kind of like the less inquisitive or like newer investor or person who's not looking for the research and they're just copying what other people are doing, let's say they find information on TikTok or on Instagram, they just see this video and they're like, yeah, I'll apply that strategy, but it might not be the right context for the right reason, and therefore they're not going to get the predictable outcome.
Yes.
So I think that's how it could translate.
Yes, and you've got a really good point there. And this is what, I'm just going to put a plug in for Good Fruit Investors now, because that is exactly what we're about. When it comes to Good Fruit Investors, that's why at Good Fruit Investors, we've got 10 courses. we've got courses on every type of topic, and all of the topics relate to a passive investor, somebody who does not want to put their whole full-time work into that. I focus on being a social worker, a pastor, and I have the same kind of background, going to university, getting, understanding evidence-based practices, all of that. And so in the financial industry, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so at Good Fruit Investors, we provide that education so people get that foundation right. They get the right foundation. They understand a lot of that research. They understand a lot of the pieces. You can't skip that step. That's a step that everybody needs to take. If you're going to really invest and invest well, that research is critical in the beginning part. And then we also have a community so that people can actually communicate with one another, and they can have different thoughts challenged. Like, we actually are excited when people challenge the thought processes. Like when people challenge the assumptions even in a course, like those are good, healthy dialogues, because it helps to refine, it helps to grow, and it helps to flourish the community. And so at Good Fruit Investors, we're starting our Essentials course that's basically going to be starting this September 12th.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And I mean, it's the first course. So if you're wanting to get that journey started, it is a really good course. And maybe you're not there. Maybe you don't want to pay for getting into a course like that. Well, that's fine. We've got other free courses. We've got our 10 Pillars of Financial Investing that you can take. And we've got How to Avoid Scams. Those are some really good courses that we felt we needed to give to the audience for free, because we don't want people getting put into a hard place. Like, if they don't have the desire to learn all of these investment strategies and learn how to do portfolios, and maybe they just want to go to a financial advisor, at least having like the right pillars in place, at least having, just a good understanding on what kinds of scams are out there. That way, when they're out in the market looking for somebody to help them with that, they're not going to get, blindsided and lose. Exactly. And have somebody, like you said, with TikTok, they're just mimicking a strategy, and they don't realize the amount of risk, the weight of risk in what they've done. Yeah. And all of a sudden their portfolio goes from like having lots of money down to like negative 70 or 80%. And they're like, what happened? Yeah. Right?
Yeah. So being educated definitely equips you so much more to be able to make smart decisions, both in the medical field and in the investment world.
That's right.
Another thing I wanted to say with just understanding research-based decision making when it comes to investments is looking at the source of the information. So we talked about, TikTok, Instagram, all those things, but also there's value in community, like you were saying, and having that conversation and knowing that, okay, well, this is a good suggestion coming from someone, but what's the source of that? Has it been tested? Has it been tried? Or
that's right.
Is it a new idea? Because new ideas are great. There'd be no advances in medicine if people didn't have new ideas to try.
That's right.
But just understanding what the level of risk is. So we wouldn't try a new intervention for the first time on a real person. We do it in the simulation lab.
That's right.
And then we talk through how that could work out. As a group, we actually did that.
Right.
And then we apply it in practice.
And then you also have the idea of like, when you're talking about the kind of research, I think what you're trying to get at too is if you had like a case study, that's like one of the beginning stages, I believe, in the research sphere. It's like, you start with your case studies, and that kind of gives you a little bit of a framework of thinking, but then you get into more complex research methodologies, and then some of them have a little bit more water that they can hold because they've been
randomized control trial, double blind,
exactly.
placebo controlled, all those things we look to see that is this really robust research.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, and thank you guys for joining us. Sorry if that was a bit of a long plug on Good Fruit Investors. It's just when I think of research, when I think of what we're trying to do here in the industry, like when it comes to the financial industry, is really turn it on its head. We don't want people making stupid decisions. And part of those decisions come from just not putting that time in, not being the why person and saying, well, why? And when it comes to finances, it's one of those areas I think that, can be quite difficult because, you don't want, you really shouldn't be making decisions without having that research behind it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Can I add one more thing?
yeah, go for
Is
it.
that when I was training nurses, the ones who I knew would be the most successful were the ones who asked the most questions. They weren't scared of looking silly or that they didn't know something. They were okay with the fact that they didn't know, and they would ask questions so that they could grow. And I think that's kind of the first step, because you're not going to look for information if you think you already have it.
That's right.
Right? So
Yeah.
asking questions is such a good thing. So even if I feel if you're in the position of, wow, I don't know what that means, I'm going to go find out. Or I want to know, is that a reputable source? Just starting to ask the questions puts you into a really good place of having an opportunity to grow, I think, in all areas.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next show.